are these guys eating? Yeah, they're going to eat dead stuff. So a lot of times we think of raptors as sort of catching these live prey. Oh, no, I should clarify. Aura is a flighted bird, so we're going to do flights with Aura. So we just stress again on box. You'll notice we don't get a real chicken bone. And it sort of simulates, the carcass upon which you would find her meal. She's quite enjoying it. But Aura has been with us for almost 2 years now. She came in August 2023. Her name comes from Cathartis Aura, which means cleansing breeze. That's her Latin name, Cathartis Aura. And that refers to their value to the ecosystem as nature's beauty. Let's have you watch a flight or two. Whenever she flies and Dylan feeds her, look at the way that he feeds her. You notice how he's sort of using a fist a little bit, she's kind of getting in there? Does anybody have any idea why we would do that over maybe just some fingers? It relates to some, yeah, you got it?
I think it's because they mistake your finger for the food or something like that.
So that is part of it, but another reason is that it sort of simulates the hole that she would find in a carcass. And there's a carcass on this next slide, just a little bit of a trigger warning. But so yeah, this is where you're going to see these guys, right? They're going to ride these huge thermal vents of air in the sky for time and time again. You're going to catch that one here. We've all seen them, right? Circling in the sky, and they're going to try to use their sense of smell. So they're very interesting in that they sort of challenge those norms of raptors against. They don't use their intense eyesight to find their prey or their carcass. They're going to use the sense of smell that they catch from the warmer air. Any other question? Oh, sorry, what's that? That's a great question. So Aura will not be released back into the wild. And we talked earlier about how our ambassadors are non-releasable. And for Aura, do we have anybody here from Kentucky? Worth a shot. So Aura's from Louisville. She was picked up as a chick by Fish and Game. And she was actually accidentally human imprinted, which means she associates with humans from a very young age. And that's a very hard thing to successfully regress out of. And so if we released Aura, she might be able to fly and find food, but she would forever see humans as a resource. She would see everybody as Dylan, essentially. But if you imagine yourself just in the park and the vulture comes and steals your sandwich, that's kind of a bad day. And so Aura's going to be with us for a while. And props to Dylan because she is 4.5 pounds. She's pretty heavy for a raptor. Yeah, you have a question?
How old is she?
Aura? So Aura is about 2, right? And so she's still pretty young. Vultures in the wild can live about 16 to 20 years. There she goes. But so her stomach acid is incredibly powerful. It's about a huge. She's so awesome.
We gotta get Dylan.
Yeah.
Turkey vultures are just the coolest darn animals. They actually have an eye just like you and I. It's not the same eyeball as a falcon or a hawk. They see like you and I think that's why they behave in a certain way. They're seeing the world a little bit more. I do have a few minutes, and I want to introduce you to Brian Bedrosian, who is our research conservation director. I've been working with two of us for the last 20 years. Brian is truly one of the leading raptor ecologists on the planet today. Has been managing the Western Golden Eagle management team. And I just think to be able to hear from Brian, who is a very dear friend and who I deeply admire, about what is research? What does it mean? What does it take to do? Brian, if you don't mind?
Great, thanks everybody for coming. As Roger said, I'm Brian Bedrosian. I run the research and conservation teams here at Teton Raptor Center. And as you saw in the video, this is actually Nathan, who's been on our team, and this is what we do. So I just wanted to just kind of introduce a little bit about what it means to be a biologist. You know, when I was sitting in these, when I was your age, for a lot of you younger folks sitting in the seats, I didn't even know what a bird was, let alone what a raptor was or how to study them. And now I've been here almost 25 years in Wyoming, working to conserve golden eagles and other raptors, as well as sage grouse, ravens, and spend my life out in the field like that, catching birds, putting transmitters on them, tracking them, using that information to understand what's the best of the best. You know, that information on the Las Pampas region, we learned that by tracking Swainson's hawks after they were dying and following them down there. Colleagues of ours that work with golden eagles as well. So yeah, just a little bit of background about what we do. We're out in the field almost 365 days out of the year. All the crew's actually out doing nighttime rabbit surveys as we, while they're sleeping right now, because they were doing the surveys last night out till about 5 a.m. Because what do raptors eat? Rabbits. And that's how we can understand, you know, when the rabbits crash, the eagles crash. And they come back, they come back. We're out flying hundreds of thousands of miles in little two-seater airplanes, trying to find these nests across the huge state of Wyoming. We're sitting in a blind for 8 hours a day, waiting for a goshawk to come down to our prey, or you know, a fake owl like we did the other day to take a transmitter off. It's not just putting the transmitters on, sometimes it's taking them off too. So I have the real privilege of being a biologist here. Really, you know, I just want to showcase that we've got a world-class dedicated team. We've got, you know, more than a dozen projects across Wyoming, Montana, and tracking birds from Alaska down to Mexico. And yeah, it really feeds into the conservation of these birds, feeds into the learning and the education. Everything you guys learned today was probably learned by somebody out in the field just observing the birds. And you guys can do that too. That's really what it's all about. It's just understanding and seeing. It's like, hey, there's a kestrel, there's a red tail. And just taking a moment to see it. Because really, that's what it's all about. And just appreciating it, understanding it. And to the person sitting next to you in the car or on the bike or whatever, you can say, hey, check it out. I learned about that red tail, or I learned about that Swainson's hawk. Do you know they go all the way to Argentina? How awesome is that? And so, really, that's what it's all about. I'm happy to take any questions about what it's like, you know, to take 2 years to catch my first raven, or you know, to see an eagle come in at 90 miles an hour. It's amazing. It's absolutely wonderful, and we're just glad to be able to share some of that experiences with you guys. Yeah.
What level of education did you need to get to this point as a biologist?
Yeah, that's a great question on what it took for my education to become where I'm at. So I have just a college degree in biology, and then after I learned I wanted to do this, I actually got the privilege of somebody saying, hey, you want to go catch a goshawk? And I was like, yeah, I do. I get in the back seat of his car, he's got a great horned owl sitting next to me. I was like, what the heck? Whatever this is, I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I did end up, I did go get a graduate degree. I have a master's, I studied ravens here for that degree, but I don't have a PhD, even though I'm adjunct faculty at University of Wyoming. Like, you can work your way up, and you know, it's just a lot of hard work and perseverance. And I just have a degree in biology. I wanted to keep it broad in case I wanted to teach high school or something like that. But I learned, you know, all the nuance of raptors and raptor ecology and wildlife ecology just through doing work. I did my undergraduate in Wisconsin, and then I did my master's work in Arkansas. Even though I was doing my research here, I just needed a place to go to school. So being 24 hours away from your study site, not ideal, but you know, is a pathway to where we need to be. Thanks for asking.
Anyone else?
When did GPS tracking become available for research? Had you do research before that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, Roger and I we actually pioneered a lot of the GPS tracking technology. I actually created, I had an NSF grant, and I created my own GPS trackers. I created all the methodologies for use in sage grouse, a lot with raptors. I created there's a breakaway technique now that we just do a little cotton stitch in the backpack of the transmitter that goes on an eagle, so it falls off. You know, you don't want a transmitter that only works for 3 years sitting on a bird that can live for 30, right? So really that all started in about 2000, 2001. It didn't really take off until about 2010, 2012. When we first started, the transmitters were pretty large, but because they're on birds, they can be solar recharged, because they're sitting on the back, they're flying, and so we can recharge them solar. We have transmitters now that have been active for 10 years on bird that we tracked during migration. But initially, those little units were $4,000 a piece. Yeah, imagine buying $4,000 and then putting it on an eagle and saying, I hope this works. Because just like with pushing technology of everything, it didn't always work. The failure rate was pretty high initially, which really was unfortunate. But now I can get data, sub-second data on an eagle. I can actually watch an eagle go up in a thermal using the GPS tracks. And it's got three-dimensional gyroscopic sensors. So I can tell if a bird's perched. As soon as it starts flying, then it starts getting those sub-second fixes. I know if it hits prey, I know if it's successful, I know if it's not. So we're using that kind of information to understand the effects of disturbance on birds. When is an adult female golden eagle flushed off her nest from, say, a biker or a hiker coming by? And how do we use that to identify the area around the nest to protect, to reduce her disturbance? So it's not just like the large-scale habitat tracking, it's some of the really fine-scale detailed behaviors. And now we're even going so far as to understand how the adults are teaching their young. How the adults are teaching their young where to go, what to hunt, what to avoid, and what to use. And so it's really exciting technology. It's been ever evolving, and I'm sure it will evolve even more. We're down to now like 1 gram transmitters that can get GPS fixes. And so that's about the size we can fit on a route and make it small. Yeah.
One time when I was out in the park, we saw a golden eagle. We looked up the first so it had a snake in its talons. Then it dropped with a stick.
Yeah.
And it swooped down and grabbed it, flew up again, and did it probably 5 or 6 times over the lunch. Was it playing or practicing?
I think it's both. I've seen that actually quite a bit. We have a migration station where we watch the golden eagles migrate down from Canada down into the lower 48. And we see that oftentimes they'll have a stick and they'll actually drop it. We use pigeons to bring them in. They'll drop it and see if they can flush the bird so they can grab it. Or we've also seen them in pairs playing, and we see this with ravens a lot, but I have seen it with goldens where they'll play keyboard. One will go up, they'll drop the stick, the other one will come down and grab it in midair, go up, drop it, and they're just, I think they're playing. And play is a great learning tool. We use it as a learning tool, so do animals.
For several years, we would have an owl come on the house at night, and we would hear it. It's been years since we've seen an owl hooting in our neighborhood or on our house. What's going on?
I mean, it could be anything, the birds, when we see birds, oftentimes, and they repeatedly year after year, it's likely they have a territory there. But, a lot of things happen to these birds. It's hard to make a living out in the wild. And if it died, sometimes those territories aren't replaced, particularly if it's near houses and other birds aren't used to that. Some birds get more used to people than others do. And so it's hard to say, but all we can say is, I know in our work, we use that hooting a lot to understand where they are, how many there are. And we can even now identify an individual owl based on its vocal fingerprint. So just like we can now, we can use voice recognition for owls. That's how we find them out in the woods, and that's how we can sense them now and track them without even having to tag them, which is awesome. A nice, non-invasive way to do some research.
We'll take one more question. Yeah.
So, Linda, I'm curious now how much GPS track costs, but I'm also curious as to how you're navigating changing science funding landscape.
Yeah, so we're talking about like what's going on with science funding, how do we navigate that, how are we helping our partners, how are we helping ourselves to continue this work, because it's really important. The good thing about the cost of transmitters, which you asked about, is they're now coming down. They're about $1,200 to $1,800 a piece, depending on the technology and the size. So that's down. It's still ridiculously expensive when you want to try and get 50 or 100 transmitters out. The funding piece it's tough. I will say we are currently picking up the pieces of projects to monitor the population of golden eagles in Wyoming, for example. The service used to do that, they can't anymore. We have now picked that up. So, and, you know, we rely on donations and donors like you guys, so going down to the shop and purchasing something for a present or for yourself helps us and helps fund us. Also, you know, any additional support for that is always helpful. But yeah, state and federal agencies are definitely hurting these days, and they're relying more and more on organizations like Teton Raptor Center and other nonprofits to help pick up those pieces. So we're doing the best we can, and hopefully we can maintain some of these longer data sets that are really important to understand what's going on. So thank you.
Ryan. Dylan, if you'd like to, I was just gonna wrap things up, Walt. We have kept you right to the last minute. There are years of stories. If you'd like to stay around and ask, we would love that. But two things as you leave, and then I'll hand it over to Dylan, is that we do have 3 other programs. Well, if you're here in the Valley, and I mean it, it's because we truly love this stuff. We take a deep dive into migration on another one of our programs. We take a deep dive into the different habitat types and how these birds are in and around our human-built environment. We have a whole other program on just some of the more remarkable adaptations to these raptors. So please come back and learn more and more about what we're talking about today. And I think as Dylan, I'll let Dylan ask, is the question of why.
Yeah, so why should we care about our raptors? And I'm actually asking all of you, so when it comes to these birds, especially from what you just learned here today, why should we care? Do you have any ideas? Yeah, you have one. Because they're beautiful birds. That is actually one of the best answers I've had, so great job. Yeah, awesome. So they're beautiful birds, but also they're animals that we should care about because they're also known as being bioindicators. So what does that mean? It means that if, say, a population of rodents is declining, one of the first things to go would actually be our raptors. So if a habitat or an ecosystem, so a place where they live, is not healthy, that's where they're going to be one of the first birds to disappear. So that's why here at the Raptor Center, we focus on education, research, rehabilitation, so we can keep these raptor populations thriving, but also to inspire folks to care about these birds, because we couldn't do any of this work without each and every one of you. Even just coming here today and learning about raptors, talking about these birds with you, that's a way that we can care about these birds. So even something as simple as like attending a raptor presentation helps a lot. But anyways, I want to thank you so much for coming. And as you walk outside, make sure that you're looking for some of these birds in the wild, like either peregrine falcons, vultures, or swings and socks. All those birds you can see actually out here, maybe in the Teton and support the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So with that, I thank you, and remember to look up to the skies and see these amazing raptors. Thank you so much. Then, if you have any parting questions after you're leaving, feel free to come up and ask myself, Roger, Dana, any of our other staff members. But thank you so much.